No, she did not.
Yeah, she assaulted me.
My colleagues this way in this space.
What's that?
Get the fuck out of the
And now you're screaming at me.
So my colleagues like this out of
What do you mean, young lady?
Get out of the door.
Oh. Hi folks, Bob Tuscan here, and I just saw a sign for free HIV testing. When you get a HIV test, you're not testing for HIV. What you're testing for are antibodies, and those antibodies can be present in your system because a number of different reasons. Namely, your body's fighting off illness, and those markers are not at all 100% identical to the markers of the HIV virus that they have not been able to isolate. And we have Dr. Peter Duesberg, who is the leading virologist in the world, who's come out and shown that these HIV tests are bogus. Now you might ask, well then why are people dying? Well, I'll explain that while I talk to the people giving the test in just a moment. Well, in the very establishment that these HIV tests are being given, I just so happened to look at their health section, and sure enough is the book by Dr. Peter Duesberg, Inventing the AIDS Virus, detailing the HIV propaganda and the truth about the topic. I highly recommend this, as well as the documentary House of Numbers and HIV equals AIDS, Fact or Fraud. Hi there.
Yeah, come on
you available
in.
to see me now? Great.
Yeah. Sorry about that.
No problem.
Alright, let me just get this all set up for you.
Great.
While I'm doing that, got some little crowded on this desk.
Sure.
Just give me 1 second. So, while you're doing that, so have you been tested before?
I won't get tested. I'm actually here to ask about the test.
Oh!
Yeah, I have some questions.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
What does the HIV test actually test for?
So what it does, we specifically, let me show you. So we use the mouth swabs. There's multiple types, either blood or mouth swabs. The one that we do, so there's a 90-day window period for this test specifically. But with this, when you swab your cheeks, it's testing your skin cells to test for HIV antibodies that are present in your system.
So it tests for antibodies. It doesn't actually test for the HIV virus.
No, for antibodies.
Okay, and when are antibodies present in our systems?
So it really varies. This specifically, most window periods are 90 days because that's when it's more present in your system. I mean, there are some days that cut the window periods down to 21 days, but even then, those are not as accurate.
But the question is, are antibodies only connected to HIV?
Well, I think with, personally, and correct me if I'm wrong, personally, I think, and again, I'm going to double check this for you, so
Sure.
don't take my word on this. If you have any specific kind of virus, there's always going to be antibodies to it. If your body's trying to fight it off.
So any virus?
So yeah, like any virus, like any kind of antibodies.
Right.
So, but this one specifically, this test is geared towards only the HIV antibodies.
How do you differentiate HIV antibodies versus other antibodies?
That I'm actually not so sure
Yeah,
about.
see,
that's a very, that's like at the, molecular level. So
Sure.
I'm not 100% sure on that, but I'll totally look that up.
Well, the reason why I ask is because I'm actually an AIDS activist myself.
Cool.
And one of the things that we've been able to show conclusively is that the HIV test, doesn't test for HIV, and oftentimes prevents people from really getting to the bottom of their true illness. For instance, people with hepatitis, pregnant women. When you're pregnant, your bodies are naturally putting off more antibodies to protect your children in the womb. And as a result, they tend to flag these tests, which again are not conclusive to the HIV virus, which, by the way, you might find interesting. Have you ever seen HIV under a microscope?
No, I haven't.
What you may have seen is artist renditions of the virus, but they've never actually been able to isolate the HIV virus under a microscope. Did you know that?
No.
Yeah, it's fascinating. So what we do is we work with people who are diagnosed with HIV, and they're told, for instance, there's a girl by the name of Lindsay Nagel, and she was told that she had months to live. Anyways, she was told that she had months to live. She was adopted by parents from the United States. She was in Romania, and they brought her over. She got tested. And they said, I'm sorry, folks, but your new daughter has HIV/AIDS, and she will die pretty soon here. So they ran to the pharmacy, and they got the medication. Now, the medications have changed over the years, but at that time, it was AZT. And AZT was a chemotherapy test drug that they rejected in studies for chemotherapy, and it's shown to be a DNA destroyer. And they ran to the pharmacy. They gave her the first dose they could just to try to save, as much time of this little girl's life as possible. Well, she was a perfectly healthy girl at that point of receiving the test. And she then started to have symptoms. She then started to become real weak, having a hard time walking, and so on and so forth. And the doctors kept saying, this is the HIV. Well, the parents started to read the symptoms of the side effects of the AZT drug, and they realized that they were very similar. So they wrote a letter to the leading virologist in the world, Dr. Peter Duesberg. And they said, Dr. Duesberg, you've studied HIV, you were very close with the so-called discoverer, Dr. Robert Gallo. Dr. Robert Gallo, the so-called discoverer of the HIV virus, accredited Dr. Duesberg as being the leading virologist in the world, hands down. He's out of the UC Berkeley. And Dr. Duesberg said, get this little girl off the medication right away. And they did so. She's now 26 years old, in full health, my friend. And unfortunately, everybody else in her portion of the hospital at that time, in the AIDS portion,
what's the name?
Her same, yeah, Lindsay Nagel. Unfortunately, everyone else who stayed on the medication passed away. All of them dead. Well, here's a first.
Are there specifics?
Here's a first step. This is Dr. Duesberg's book, which was actually on the shelf here at the CMC. And you can take this from me if you will. And that's called Inventing the AIDS Virus, where he conclusively shows that the mainstream science on HIV has been heavily misleaded at best, if not fraudulent.
No, there's a lot of studies out there that, no. And I don't really feel comfortable with you filming me.
Okay.
You didn't really ask, so I'm not very...
It's a public place, so...
Yeah, but my face isn't public, so I'd really...
Yeah, well, when it's in a public place, it is. You don't have to... I'll be happy to leave. But if you wish to continue...
I really appreciate you leaving, because...
You don't want to learn about this? You're trying to do a good thing here.
I think you're a little misguided, but I'd really appreciate it if you left.
Oh, sure. Do you want any other sources you're about to write
no,
down?
You can take this back.
No, so you're closed-minded and you want to continue to put people in harm's way by HIV testing them?
Those tests specifically test for HIV antibodies. They're not going to test for any other, say, if there's the flu. It's not going to get misled with the flu.
But you weren't able to articulate to me, and maybe this is a gap in your research which you'll come back and share with me, but you weren't able to articulate what differentiates the particular markers for an HIV antibody versus any other antibody that's connected to an ailment you might be suffering. I
personally don't know because I just haven't looked. But other than that, there are plenty of resources out there. If you went to the health department and asked them, they would probably...
I have asked them, and they haven't been able to show me, unfortunately. In fact, I've documented all this, and that's why I document this, is to try to hold people accountable. Because unfortunately what happens is, somebody's told they have HIV and they're going to die. Well, just the psychological factors involved with that are detrimental. But then when you couple that...
asked to film me, so
I don't need your permission again to film you. I can film anybody in a public place. Well, that's the laws. I'm familiar with the laws because I do this sort of journalism on a regular basis. But anyways, if you would like to continue the discussion, I'd be happy to share with you. Okay, sure.
Have a great afternoon.
I would appreciate that you take a closer look at this info, though.
I'm good, thank you.
You're going to continue to be closed-minded, putting people in harm's way?
Yep.
All right, well, what was your name?
I'm not telling you. Get out.
Lucas DeMonte. Great.
Yep.
Thank you, Lucas. Give me a moment, please. I'm a little slow.
No, you need to leave right now.
I'm going to leave, but I'm going to do so at a pace where I don't fall down these stairs.
Well, I hope you don't fall, but it's time for you to go.
No, it's time for me to go when I say it's time for me to go, Lucas.
And I know you've
I'm
other colleagues of mine as well, so
yeah.
It's time for you to leave.
Oh, so they've told you about this discussion about...
They said there was somebody that was giving misleading information. So
misleading? Well, you haven't... How do you know if it's misleading if you haven't been able to check on the sources? No, I'm not going to leave because you tell me to. This isn't your domain. In fact...
Actually, I know most of the people here, if I ask them to have you taken out, they take you out.
Okay, well, I'm not causing a disturbance. I'm trying to have a conversation in a place that's supposed to be an open-minded library here. It's kind of astonishing to me, Lucas, that you are continuing to be closed-minded and denying the fact that there's a lot of information out there that shows...
I wish you luck, but it's time for you to actually get up.
No, it's not, Lucas.
Time for you to...
No, it's not.
I can contact the owners right now.
Yeah, call Joe and tell him Bob Tuscan's here.
Oh, great.
Thanks so much.
Yeah.
So anyways, that shows you folks that the same people that are trying to do good, and I believe Lucas is a genuine dude trying to do good, the same people that are trying to do good, excuse my foggy camera work here, are basically ignoring the conversation that needs to be had here. Every year, thousands of people are diagnosed with HIV and told that they have a death sentence. And the reality of the situation is, they're not dying. What's up?
To step outside, please.
And who are you?
I am one of the facilitators of this space.
Okay. Well, I'm not causing a disturbance, am I? Is this open to the public, this area?
Filming people without their consent, and that's
It's a
You've been
public
asked to
place.
leave. No, it's not a public place.
I was asked to leave by this gentleman who, last I checked, did not represent the Civic Media Center. Is he on the board? Are you on the board?
No, I'm not on the board.
Okay, well, unfortunately, Joe and I have had this conversation before, and he's welcomed me personally to the facility.
Joe and I will have another conversation. I'm asking you.
Okay, is there? For what reason are you asking me to leave?
I'm asking you to leave because I've been told that you're making people feel unsafe.
Unsafe?
I'm led to
not
believe
me
that you've done this before.
specifically. I think you're very misguided, but you have made other colleagues of mine unsafe. And
Unsafe?
It's really appreciative of you.
And how do you know that's me
I will
who's made them
call- let's
unsafe?
Let's outside, please.
I need you to leave.
You don't tell me what to do, Lucas.
Let's
You know what?
please step
You
up.
don't tell me what to do, dude.
You have multiple people asking you to...
And I'll leave in just a moment. I have
You're
no
also
problem.
filming without our consent.
It's a public place, Lucas.
But that doesn't mean you film somebody without their consent.
Of course it does.
No, that doesn't.
Yeah, it does. In fact, that's the truth.
You need to leave.
Lucas,
take the book if you
I'm going to
want.
put it back so that other people who are misguided like yourself can learn the truth rather than getting defensive and saying, you know, I don't want to have this conversation. Why don't you just look at the sources, dude? You wanted to help people, right? That's why you do this.
I mean, I'm guessing that's why you do it. In some form, you want to help someone.
So if we're both have that commonality, then why not just hear me out?
Because what you're saying doesn't make any sense.
I'm providing sources to you where it does make sense. In fact, Dr. Peter Duesberg, the leading virologist out of the University of Berkeley, he's somebody that makes perfect sense too. So I would urge you to check that out. Do you want a great documentary on the topic?
No, I'm okay. Thank you.
So you want to continue to ignore the
Yes,
subject?
I would love to.
Okay, well that's a shame because ultimately,
Can you please step outside?
no, I'm having a civil conversation. I don't need to be rushed
It's
along.
not a civil conversation.
Why not?
Because I've asked you to.
Hey, you're not supposed to be here. What's going on?
What do you mean I'm not supposed to be here?
Hey, I'm gonna
Do
go-
not touch my phone.
Okay, then please leave.
I can leave on my own fruition. I'm not creating a
I don't know what
disturbance.
you're doing.
You just tried to assault me, ma'am.
No.
Yeah, you did. You tried to assault
No.
me. You can't put your hands on me. She can't touch my phone. Anyways,
I can't ask you to leave.
you can, but ultimately,
Start calling the police.
that's fine. But I want to put this in the right place here of the library that I found it.
Do this.
I came here because I simply wanted to inform.
Multiple of my friends. It's
I need you.
Actually, I haven't harassed
I'm
anyone.
gonna
I
call
need
the
you to
cops
leave
right now.
now.
That's fine. You can call the police and they'll tell you that either I'm allowed here
I need you
or
to
I'm not
leave
allowed here, but I am
right
allowed to
now.
film.
Leave.
Dude, you're not going to threaten me with calling the cops and scare me. And you, young lady, assaulted me.
No, she did not.
Yes, you assaulted
Young
me.
lady?
My colleagues this way in this space.
What's that?
Get the fuck out of the
And now
library.
you're
We're not
screaming
gonna
at me.
talk To my colleagues like this out of
What
the
do you
door.
mean, young lady?
Get out of the door.
Okay, pick your pronouns. All right, so that's the reaction you get from crazed transsexuals and homosexuals, and put that aside for a moment and just let's talk about the fact that they're putting people in harm's way, unfortunately. They're putting people on a daily basis in harm's way with the HIV fraud that needs to be exposed. The same community that suffers greatly from the HIV virus is the same one that gets up in arms, ironically, over real information in regards to the HIV virus. Again, I'll let this video speak for itself. Unfortunately, I don't have my last encounter that he was referring to, but for whatever reason, this is an emotionally charged issue that many people seem to get very upset about. And I tried to keep a cool, calm, and collected perspective to expose the HIV fraud putting people in harm's way. Contact Well Florida Council. Also contact the Civic Media Center in Gainesville, Florida, and ask them why they refuse to look at the information and all the while continue to put people in harm's way with the fraudulent HIV test. It's a very scary situation. We know people died from the false flag terror on 9/11 in thousands, if not millions, because of the subsequent wars in the Middle East. Well, the HIV fraud continues to unfortunately stricken the streets on a daily basis under a false pretext that is this HIV retrovirus bullshit. Bob Tuskin, bobtuskin.com. Check it out.